Welcome to Egypt. I'm going to start out with a brief introduction to Egyptian culture. Then we will dive right into 3 very full days of Egyptian art. I'll come back to this slide very soon, but let me start out by noting that we are covering a long period of time, and we won't even be delving into Egypt under Persian, Greek, and Roman rule. To put this timeline into perspective, 2,500 years pretty much covers the rest of this course. We will go from here to here, to here, and here, close to a century beyond this work, in fact. Now let's look at the same 2,500 year time frame with Egyptian art. We begin here with Pre-Dynastic Egypt, move to here, Old Kingdom Egypt, to here, New Kingdom Egypt, and to here, Egypt around the time of the Assyrian conquest and before the Persian, Greek, and Roman conquests. Okay, we don't actually travel through this much Egyptian time. We don't have a work from 650 BCE. But note how similar the statue on the right is to the Old Kingdom statue of Menkaure Queen, which is one of our required works. This doesn't mean that Egypt was static all this time. Instead, Egyptian history alternated between periods of stable, centralized kingly rule and periodic disruptive invasions. So, which dates do you need to keep straight? Wish I could say none, but the AP test will sometimes give you date parameters. Let's keep it simple. Think of Old Kingdom as the 2000s, BCE that is. That's also the age of the Great Pyramid. So, if the question is asking you about pyramids, it's asking you about Old Kingdom Egypt. Indeed, pyramids may very well have brought the Old Kingdom down. I have a candidate for an AP question that will never appear on the test. Discuss how a work of art destroyed a culture. Contrary to myth, slaves did not build the pyramids. These were huge public works projects, and they cost a whole lot of money to build. Increasingly, pharaohs had to rely on regional governors or nomarchs to assemble the workforce, and eventually those regional governors had the resources to successfully challenge central control. Middle Kingdom Egypt did not build pyramids. It was a time of major military expansion, and in fact, Middle Kingdom Egyptian leaders built splendidly constructed fortifications, but they're not on our list. Whew! In fact, you'll encounter no images from the Middle Kingdom at all. That's 500 years we don't have to worry about. The New Kingdom is the golden age of Ramses and other empire-building pharaohs, and its most characteristic architecture was the temple. So if you see an Egyptian temple on the AP exam, it's probably New Kingdom. In fact, it will be New Kingdom. The Judgment of Hunefer, King Tut's coffin, and the weird relief sculpture are also New Kingdom works. Stay tuned. So leaving aside pyramids versus temples and skipping over a few invasions, why does Egyptian culture show such remarkable stability? The map gives us a few clues. The Nile is the longest river in the world, but the Nile Valley is just a couple of miles wide on either side. Anyone who wants to rule Egypt has to impose rule over a much larger total area in square miles than Mesopotamian city-states, but also has easy access to this area and its inhabitants via the river. Both of these geographical realities created an incentive for, and also made possible, the creation of a more centralized administrative state. The Nile floods predictably, unlike the Tigris and Euphrates, which flood irregularly and constantly change course. Yet the Nile's flow is also highly cyclical. As we will see, Egyptian religion and politics worship the unchanging and the linear. History, if you will, in the shape of the Nile. But Egyptian religion and politics also centered on the cycle of life, death, and above all, rebirth into the afterlife, again reflecting the cyclical nature of the Nile. It's harder to invade through a desert, so Egypt was not as subject to invasion as Mesopotamian city-states, although it was successfully conquered a few times. Again, this relative invulnerability gave Egyptians a greater sense of security and longevity. Interestingly, most of the invaders quickly became more Egyptian than the Egyptians. Cleopatra, for example, was really Greek. The good news is that you don't have to keep a lot of non-Egyptian influences straight. The required works the College Board has given us are very Egyptian. One further confusing note, which the map should help make clear. Lower Egypt is in the north, Upper Egypt is in the south. The two kingdoms were united around 3100 BCE, which is really where our story starts. Old Kingdom authority centered in Lower Egypt with its capital at Memphis. New Kingdom Egypt centered in Upper Egypt, its capital at Thebes. At the heart of Egyptian ideology, politics, and culture was the pharaoh, the ruler who placated the gods, petitioned the gods, and eventually became a god. But he couldn't just do whatever he wanted. He couldn't just follow his whims, as we'll see when we get to a pharaoh who really did try. Most pharaohs accepted their responsibility to maintain ma'at, that is, right order and harmony. Pharaohs brought ma'at to their kingdoms and people, but they were also subject to ma'at. This New Kingdom poem sums up the pharaoh's role, I think, really well. He was sent by the gods, and without him the people would suffer and die. No wonder they served him in life and beyond. Now, on to Egyptian sculpture, architecture,